Have you ever felt like the harder you work, the more people push back against you? That's kind of the story we're jumping into today. We're in Genesis chapter 26, looking at Isaac, a guy who's trying to make his own way, but finds out that getting blessed can actually be a huge problem. It's a wild ride. Let's dig in.
So this is the big question hanging over the entire chapter. What do you do when the good things happening in your life make other people jealous or even hostile? We're going to see how Isaac deals with a world where his own prosperity turns him into a threat. Okay, let's kick things off with verse 1. The story opens, and right away there's trouble. A famine. Just picture it. The ground is all cracked and dry, nothing's growing. It's déjà vu, right? The same thing happened back in his father Abraham's time. So, with no other choice, Isaac packs up and heads to Gerar, into the territory of a Philistine king named Abimelech. So Isaac is on the move, desperate, just trying to find some food. But right as he's about to make a huge decision, God steps in and completely changes his plans. This moment of crisis is about to set the stage for a massive, life-altering promise.
This brings us to verse 2. Now, you got to imagine Isaac is thinking, Egypt. That's the ancient world supermarket. It's the logical move. But then the Lord appears to him with a very clear command. Hold on, don't go down to Egypt. You need to stay right here in the land I'm going to show you. It's a test of faith from the very first minute.
So why should he stay? Well, verses 3, 4, and 5 lay out the deal of a lifetime. In verse 3, God says, "Stick around and I will be with you and bless you." That's not just a promise of stuff, but a promise of his presence. Then in verse 4, it goes from personal to cosmic. God says he'll make Isaac's descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Sound familiar? It's the same incredible promise he made to Abraham. And finally, verse 5 connects it all back. This is happening because Abraham was faithful. The blessing is a family thing.
So Isaac listens. He stays put in Gerar. But just because he obeyed God on where to live doesn't mean his fear just vanished. And what he does next, well, it's like watching a rerun of one of his father's biggest mistakes.
All right, let's look at verses 6 and 7. Isaac is settling in, but there's a problem. His wife, Rebekah, is, as the text puts it, beautiful to behold. And fear starts creeping into Isaac's mind. He's thinking, these guys are going to kill me just to get to her. So what does he do? He resorts to a lie. When they ask about her, he says, she is my sister. He puts his own safety ahead of his trust in God.
Now for verse 8. Some time goes by, and Isaac starts to relax a little, but he's got eyes on him he doesn't know about. Picture this scene. King Abimelech is just looking out his palace window, maybe watching the day go by, and he spots Isaac and Rebekah. But he doesn't just see them talking. He sees Isaac being affectionate, in that way a husband is with his wife. Definitely not how you act with your sister. The whole lie unravels in one single moment.
So in verses 9 and 10, the hammer comes down. Abimelech calls Isaac in, and you can just feel the anger. He's like, what were you thinking? She's obviously your wife. Why lie? And Isaac's excuse is pretty weak. Well, I thought I'd get killed. But Abimelech sees the bigger danger. He chews Isaac out, saying, dude, one of my men could have taken her. You would have brought a curse on my entire kingdom. It's kind of crazy, right? The foreign king is the one giving the man of God a lesson on right and wrong.
And this leads to a totally unexpected twist in verse 11. Instead of punishing Isaac for lying, Abimelech does the exact opposite. He protects him. He issues a royal command telling everyone, anybody who messes with this man or his wife will be executed, period. So the very thing Isaac was afraid of is now impossible, thanks to the king he lied to. Talk about God protecting you in surprising ways.
Okay, so Isaac is now under royal protection. He's safe. He gets to work farming the land, and this is where we see God's promise to bless him go into hyperdrive. But as you're about to see, sometimes being too blessed creates its own set of problems.
Get ready for verse 12, because this is just insane. Isaac plants some seeds, remember, in a foreign land during a famine, and what happens? He gets a 100-fold harvest. In 1 year. That's not just a good year, that's a flat-out miracle. The Bible makes it clear. The Lord blessed him. That promise from verse 3? Yeah, it's happening. Big time.
Now let's watch how this snowballs in verses 13, 14, and 15. Verse 13 says Isaac didn't just get rich. He continued prospering until he became very prosperous. He's becoming a powerhouse. Verse 14 tells us he has huge flocks, herds, tons of servants. But the locals, the Philistines, they're not cheering him on. They're getting envious, and that envy turns nasty. in verse 15, they do something truly awful. They go to the wells that Isaac's father Abraham had dug, and they fill them up with dirt. They're literally trying to choke off his lifeline.
And the final insult comes in verse 16. The same king who swore to protect Isaac comes to him with a new message. It's not an accusation, it's almost an admission of defeat. He says, "You need to leave. You've become way more powerful than us." Isaac's blessing, his success, has made him too big, too scary for his neighbors. He's officially been exiled for being too successful.
So, Isaac gets the boot. He's kicked out simply because God blessed him too much. And this kicks off the main event of the chapter, this intense, frustrating fight for the one thing everyone needs to survive out there, water. So in verses 17 and 18, we see Isaac's reaction. He doesn't start a war. He just leaves. He moves into a nearby valley and sets up camp. And the first thing he does is get to work fixing what the Philistines broke. He starts digging out all that dirt from his father's old wells, reclaiming his inheritance one bucket at a time. He even gives them the same names his father did, which is a beautiful way of honoring his legacy.
What happens next is just so frustrating. In verses 19 and 20, his guys hit the jackpot, a spring of fresh running water. But right away, the local shepherds show up shouting, "That's our water." So Isaac names the well Esek, which means quarrel. So in verse 21, what do? They pack up, move, and dig another well, and, you guessed it, the same exact thing happens. Another fight. Isaac names that one Sitnah, which means enmity or hostility. The tension is just getting worse. Finally, in verse 22, Isaac moves a good distance away and digs a third time. And this time, nothing. No fighting. He names that well Rehoboth, saying, "Finally, the Lord has made room for us."
After finding that peaceful spot, verse 23 tells us he makes his way to Beersheba, a place with a lot of family history. And that very night, in verse 24, God shows up again, and the message is so simple, but so powerful. "I'm the God of your father Abraham. Don't be afraid. I am with you." After everything Isaac's been through, can you imagine how much he needed to hear that? And his response in verse 25 is perfect. He builds an altar to worship, he pitches his tent to stay, and his servants, they do what they do best. They start digging another well.
Just when Isaac finds this rhythm of peace and worship, his past shows up on his doorstep. The very guys who kicked him out are back, but this time, they're not coming for a fight.
So in verse 26, King Abimelech arrives, and he's brought his top advisor and the commander of his army. It's a serious visit. In verse 27, Isaac is, understandably, suspicious. He's like, "What do you guys want? You hate me, remember? You threw me out." But Abimelech's answer in verses 28 and 29 is absolutely stunning. He says, "Look, we've seen it with our own eyes. The Lord is with you." They realized his success wasn't luck, it was God. He actually says, "You are now the blessed of the Lord," and he asks to make a peace treaty.
And how does Isaac react? With pure grace. Verse 30 tells us he doesn't hold a grudge. He makes them a feast. He shares a meal with the same people who filled his wells with dirt. Then, in verse 31, they all get up early the next morning and swear an oath, a formal treaty, to not harm each other. And just like that, Isaac sends them off and they leave in peace. The war for water is officially over.
And then you get this moment of just perfect timing. In verse 32, on the exact same day they swear that oath, Isaac's servants come running up to him yelling, "We found water!" They hit water in the well they had just started digging at Beersheba. So in verse 33, Isaac names the well Sheba, which means oath. And that's how the city of Beersheba gets its name. It means well of the oath, forever marking this day of peace and God's perfect provision.
Now, the chapter really could have ended there on that high note, but it doesn't. Verses 34 and 35 act like this little warning for the future. We jump ahead in time. Isaac's son Esau is 40 years old, and he marries 2 local Hittite women. And the Bible is incredibly blunt about how that went, and they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. All that external conflict with the Philistines is gone, only to be replaced by a new, heartbreaking conflict right inside his own family.
And that's what we're left with, isn't it? Isaac won the battles over land, over water, and he even made peace with his enemies. But the chapter ends with this heavy reminder that sometimes the biggest, most painful struggles we have aren't with the people outside, but they come from the choices and the heartaches right under our own roof. It's a powerful thought on where our real battles are often fought.